And we're live. Bang, bam, boom, pow, boom, boom, pow.
Breathing and punching and more.
Breathing, punching, and more.
Oh, that was the more, the kick.
Yeah. Welcome to 40 Fit Fu. I'm Oscar, and this is Mimi. And we missed last week, so we apologize. But if you go back 2 weeks to episode 48, we did a nice introduction to breathing to bring you back to a baseline.
And there were lightsabers.
Oh, that's right. There were lightsabers too for that as well. And we spent a lot of time talking about why we take deep breaths, what a deep breath looks like, how to set up from the floor, from the ground up, and then what that means for getting yourself prepared to do your activity, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, fitness. Man, I'm getting a lot of love right now, and it just feels good. I'm just like, gobbling it up. It's like, yum, 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 yum. Yeah, it just kind of feeds my ego, so it feels good.
Okay.
So, I'm talking about the likes on Facebook. So today what we're going to talk about is now taking that breathing, that nice baseline that you built, and taking that breathing, and now how do you express that when you are doing your activity, your movement practice, your Kung Fu, your Tai Chi, your strength training and fitness training. So first thing that comes to mind is punching and kicking. So maybe take over from there.
Breathe when you punch and breathe when you kick.
There you go.
All right. Thanks for joining us on 40 Fit Fu. I'm a little bit hungry today, so I'm going to talk even faster than usual because this is our pre-dinner 40 Fit Fu talk. But, so yes, breathing is super important. You could probably hear me yelling breathe like 10, 20, maybe more times during class, reminding the students to breathe because it's so important. And for us, it's also one of the internal elements that we talked about last episode. We talked about respiratory strength and spirit and how that all plays together. Because if you're exhaling out loud, then we know you are at least exhaling. But are you inhaling, which is equally as important, right? So we talk about taking that deep inhale and then that exhale, which is the expression of the chi you have or expression of your energy, but also coordinating that breath with your movement, okay, is going to make it a lot more effective. Like if you find that you guys are doing your Kung Fu forms and you're holding your breath, you notice you start waning in energy, and so it affects endurance, it affects your power, it affects the technique overall. So essentially, you definitely want to take that breath. So for me, when we execute like a punch, you inhale as you prep for that punch, and then you exhale as you execute the punch. So right at the point where you're about to make that contact, whatever it is, right? That would be your exhale out. And you want it to be not like how we did the warm-up breathing last week or 2 weeks ago, right? We kind of did this nice decompression.
We did more of a breathing for baseline.
Baseline breathing, sorry, I was confused. Baseline breathing, we did the crocodile.
We did crocodile,
that's
back,
right, for Florida. I think I call it alligator because we're from Florida.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, so instead of doing more of the baseline, this is going to be more dynamic, right? So we're going to take that inhale and it's going to go a lot quicker, but you want to make sure that as you execute, that's where that exhale is coming out, that expression of power and that coordinating of inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and that expression for us is super important in Kung Fu. I know we've talked about before how it carries over for your training as well, but essentially, breathe, people. At the end of the kick, breathe. At the end of the punch, breathe. If you have a weapon, extension of your hand. Those of you who are cosplayers, ready your swords, know this. With your weapon, you want to breathe, and also if you just yell, it's a lot more intimidating.
Yeah, yelling is intimidating, and you need your breath to yell.
Yes.
So a lot of times people ask, well, why do I breathe, or when do I breathe? How do I know when to do it? And so very quickly, as to why you want to breathe this way that Mimi was talking about, is that when you inhale, as we talked about it, we try to take a deep lung breath, but when you inhale, your diaphragm expands downwards and kind of pushes things out. And so in StrongFirst, which is where I'm certified with kettlebells, the creator Pavel talks about breathing through the shield. So what you do is when you inhale, your diaphragm comes out, but we want to try not to let that expand too much. We want to keep our abs braced. And the way you can think about it is, if you were to step on a box that's completely packed, you're able to step and jump on that box, right? But if you step on a box and it's half packed and it can cave in on one side, that same thing happens here for your center. So you want to be able to breathe in and kind of brace that, and then when you exhale, that forceful expression of air and the end of your exhalation, which is why you talked about the timing, turns on your inner abdominals. So you can try this at home right now, where you inhale
and have someone punch you in the stomach
and exhale, and try to exhale all the air out. So I'm going to go a little bit longer of an exaggeration, which would be, and at the end of my exhale, my abdomen's, my deep inner abdominals turn on. And so there is something to that expression of the exhale, and why your punches and kicks are more powerful, because you have braced this, and this can be a better transmission of force out. So if you inhale, brace, exhale, inner abdominals turn on, this is stable to allow more power to then be transmitted to your fist, to your legs. So that's kind of the reasons why you want to breathe that way.
And in the shield, is it like a Captain America shield?
Yeah, I think Captain American shield would definitely be that, but we want to go with the new one that he got in Wakanda.
Right. Yeah.
So the new, even though the material I think for both came from Wakanda.
Right.
But we are
we spent some time at San Diego Comic-Con last week, so we're kind of still in the pop culture world.
Right. So that is kind of the reasons why you want to breathe that way. And the other question that I get a lot is like, well, when do I know when to breathe? And in essence, I think if your extremities or things are coming in, that's your inhale, and when things are going out, that's your exhale. So for a punch, as you said, as you're drawing energy in, this is your inhale, and as you're expressing out is your exhale. Inhale as you're chambering your leg, exhale as you expand.
Yes.
And then we coach this also in Kung Fu in transitions of stances.
Right. So it's the same thing as stepping through. So just like you would a kick or a punch, if you're stepping through, inhale, exhale as you lock in, it's almost like you're rooting out, right?
Yeah.
So the roots are coming out into the ground, or down into the ground rather, and so like that would be your exhale, locking in. Or if you step over into that lady or something, like right at that transitional point where you would be making that contact, that timing that you talked about. But good cue with the abdominals, because it is true, like you don't even realize you are bracing essentially, because if you're going to be making impact and you're all like wobbly and loosey-goosey, then the impact you're going to make is probably going to do you more damage than when the goal probably that you had, right? So even if it's a bag, even if it's like just pad work or whatever, if you're not bracing and everything is just all flimsy and you're not braced, especially at your core, that's going to be a big problem.
Right. A good way to kind of practice this, obviously your instructor, your teacher can help you with this, but a way that you can kind of see if you're maintaining the shield and then being able to breathe through that shield is you take something simple like a string or a cord or even a light belt and wrap it lightly around your side. So when you see me here, I'm kind of wrapping my shirt, and so when I breathe, am I maintaining that, or am I creating too much movement?
Right.
So there are times when that may be necessary, but if we're speaking of creating this nice stable midsection to then be able to transmit energy through, then that is where the difference is. And then this translates also to pressing, squatting, all the other fitness activities. So when I am going down into a squat with a weight, I'm going to be inhaling and packing that virtual box. And then when I exhale that through a stable midsection, and remembering that the exhale is what allows for the inner abdominals to turn on and keep me braced.
Question. Okay, so because I feel like some of our listeners might wonder, like, so now we're talking not about that baseline, or we're taking a slow breath, so it's not about speed though, right? So it doesn't mean it's just a fast breath, because you're kind of describing, different lengths of the breathing. I think people get a little bit confused of timing. Like obviously a punch, it's going to be pretty quick, so it'll be kind of a quicker breath. But for something like a squat that is still dynamic, maybe you can talk a little bit about like the length of the inhale and the length of the exhale.
So as long as you're not sacrificing the depth of the breath is the way that I would look at it. Mm-hmm. So in our last 40 Fit Fu, we talked about these slow inhales, long forceful exhales. But what was the importance of that was taking that low lung breath. Now I can make this faster, but I've just forcefully pushed that air down, and then I forcefully exhale it out. That's different than taking a quick and shallow breath, just here, up
Right.
here. So depending on experience level and your practice, then the timing of that breath may feel a little bit different, but remember not to sacrifice the depth of your breath for the speed. I guess that would be an easy way to explain it, which means sometimes you need to practice things a little slower first.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to my next thing, which was we've actually had students and kettlebell student, you know, where they would actually get lightheaded because of like, I did this much breathing before, I'm off, my breathing is off, so maybe there's some sort of, you can talk a little bit about that, like the oxygen and all that, but also like if you're not keeping a steady breath too, like you don't want to be doing really long breaths and really short breaths, or like especially, you know, like if you're doing kettlebell swings, for example, right?
Yeah,
You want to have some consistency.
So first of all is, even for our breathing to a baseline, sometimes I get clients who, they start breathing, they stand up, they feel dizzy. It could be because going from the floor up, that can be it, but a lot of times what happens is they're so used to taking shallow breaths, they're not used to taking a deep breath, which brings a lot of oxygen, and then exhaling all that carbon dioxide out, and their brain is kind of like not understanding, like, man, I'm getting so much like rich oxygen. They're
So
drunk off. They're drunk off of it, yeah. And that happens. So that's one time that happens. The other time is when they are not breathing correctly in sync with their movement. And so I've got a client who's been with me for a long time, and we work on this a lot. And he's an older gentleman, and he's got a lot stronger, moving well. But let's say he's doing something that even as like rows. And I think I posted this on Instagram today or yesterday, so you can look. And I'm coaching him through the breathing. And so really what we're trying to do is he's inhaling and then exhaling and trying to create a cadence with the breath.
Right.
And that's something that you do sometimes in class, where you're like, try to maintain the cadence with the breath, because, and everyone's cadence can be a little bit different, but you are able then to manage your fatigue this way. So what I mean for like something like punches, sometimes I just start inhaling for one, exhaling for another, just to get that cadence to allow me then to last a minute or 2 minutes of punching, and it'll look like, as opposed to, you know, this kind of like.
Because I find that a lot of students also exhale without inhaling. Right?
Correct.
That's like a big thing. Like you just want to and you
Yeah.
want to exhale out, but you have to take that inhale. Is there some sort of like thought process to like just really maybe over focusing on the inhale? Because I feel like exhaling out, people do more than inhale.
So
At
this is
least in
where
my
I'm
kung fu
not.
class.
This is where I'm not 100% sure about this. But here's what I think.
Okay.
We're just like guessing here. But I think throughout most of the day, people aren't exhaling enough.
Okay.
Throughout the day, they're doing this. They're inhaling. And how do we get rid of, like we inhale, but our body exhales and gets rid of the stuff that we need to get rid of, carbon dioxide, right? So when you are doing that all day, you're not getting all of that sympathetic tone out. So maybe when they come in then to do a class, they're just exhaling all that out. That could be it. But I think when we're adding movement to it, that kind of happens. So it's like the reverse is happening, right? When we're not doing an activity, when we're just like working or we're at home, we're inhaling too much and not exhaling out enough. When we're doing our activity, we're exhaling too much and not inhaling enough. And I don't know why. This is just like a theory that we're just kind of bringing up on our own. But having a cadence to the breath, like we talked about earlier, will help. And to bring back to my client that I was talking about earlier, he was getting fatigued all the time, and I was like, it's not because you're weak, and it's not because the weight is too heavy. It's because you're not inhaling and exhaling enough at the right rhythm. You're not.
Yeah.
So think of it almost like a worker, you know, like it's like just working.
Working
up a chain.
And when I would talk about advanced class, sometimes we would do, you know, a few kicks, and sometimes people are like, I can't kick that much, and I'm like, actually you can. Usually your respiratory gives out first because you're not focusing on it and you're not, like it's actually giving out before your muscles.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
your respiratory system, or you're not breathing, you're not keeping that cadence. And I actually found like there was a period where Oscar made me do thousands of swings with the kettlebell, and for some reason we were traveling a lot or whatever, but I was doing a lot of kettlebell work, and then I hadn't been able to get in to teach my normal classes, you know, and I normally like to do hundreds of kicks, and so I was like, oh man, it's gonna be painful to get back in there and do my straight leg kick class, and then I was like, actually, it was completely fine because, you know, muscle memory takes over. But like, because I was doing the swings with the breathing and that was like kind of coming together, it really made a difference in being able to kind of get right back into an activity that, you know, your body's fairly familiar with. So it just shows like it's really important. I think maybe even something like we always talk about, all right, if you can get up every hour of the day or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even doing any of the breathing techniques we've
Yeah.
talked about, the baseline, or even getting up and going, you know what, I'm just going to take 10 breaths or do 10 punches. Like, you don't even have to warm up your whole body to do something like that. I mean, unless you're like going crazy with these punches. I mean, yeah, but it's definitely something I think you're onto there with, like during the day, we're not paying enough attention to something as simple as breathing, so pay attention.
Yeah, and to wrap that stuff into a bow, because I love kettlebell swing so much, and we talked about earlier, yeah, I have a kettlebell there. We talked about earlier, like, when do I inhale, when do I exhale? And a simple thing is, if you're drawing things in, that's your inhale, and when you're expressing out is your exhale. Well, if you think about a kettlebell swing, and I don't even need a kettlebell for it, but as I'm coming here, I'm bringing my upper body and my legs closer together, and I'm hinging and I'm loading my body as my inhale, and then I exhale here, right? And when we're talking about the exercise of straight leg kicks, which in Wallum is a warm-up exercise, when I'm bringing my leg up, I'm bringing my body and leg closer together. That's my inhale, and then I'm bringing my leg down twice as fast. And so it's pretty much a one arm, one leg. It's a one leg kind of movement that's similar to a kettlebell swing. So since you did a bunch of kettlebell swings and then transitioned to kicks, it was very easy to kind of maintain your strength there and your endurance. So that is.
I thought you were going to do swings. I was giving you some room.
No, I did a bunch of swings earlier. We're good.
That's it. That's all I gotta say is keep breathing and look at the earlier version so you can get your baseline breath. And then I love that we went over all this dynamic breathing because that's how it goes together.
Bam. So what I would suggest is, yes, look at episode 48 of 40 Fit Food. Try to get your breathing down slower, and then try to mimic that same type of position and the feeling of a low lung breath, but maybe a little bit more faster, with more expression, with more of a snap to it, and then transition that to then adding some kind of movement. And a punch and a kick is great, a kettlebell swing is great, a squat is good. Just try to add that with a push-up, inhale, exhale, and just notice how that feels.
Okay. Thanks for joining us on 40 Fit Food every Tuesday, mostly at 7:45 p.m. Please join us. Let us know if you have questions.
This is me eating
and
the legs.
Also let us know if you have any subjects you want us to cover for all the 40-plusers and that would like to continue their training. That's what we are here for. And it's not just because we like to see ourselves on the
for me, mostly that's it.
live.
For me, mostly that's it.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe, like us, and tell your friends. Bye.